Lila Cruz never believed in ghosts until she saw the woman standing in the middle of the blizzard, her freighter. The Iron Sparrow had shuddered like a dying animal as solar flares ripped through the outer rim of the Varel system. The navigation screen blinked red, then went dark. She wrestled with the controls for 20 minutes before the ship dropped out of orbit like a stone and slammed into the frozen crust of Varel 9. The impact cracked 2 ribs and left her tasting copper, but she was alive. That was more than most pilots got in this sector. Outside, the wind howled like something with teeth. Snowflakes the size of coins slammed against the cockpit glass, and the temperature read -60, and falling. Lila wrapped her thermal coat tight, pulled her hood low, and stepped into the storm. She had maybe 3 hours before hypothermia set in. 3 hours to find shelter or die trying. The moon was supposed to be abandoned. No colonies, no outposts, just ice and silence left over from the old war. But as she trudged through knee-deep snow, something glinted in the distance, not metal, not rock, but smooth. Curved like the spine of a buried beast. She followed it, half delirious, until her boot struck a stone step. Then another, then a doorway half swallowed by frost. She pushed through and collapsed inside. Warmth hit her like a slap. The air was dry and still, and smelled faintly of pine and ozone. Firelight flickered against walls carved from black stone symbols. She didn't recognize spiraled along the ceiling and floor in patterns that seemed to shift when she looked too long. She coughed and rolled onto her back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Then she saw here a woman stood near the far wall, tall and lean, with skin like pale marble and hair the color of winter ash. It fell past her waist in loose waves and caught the firelight like spun silver. But it was her eyes that froze Lila in place. They were silver too. Not just light-colored, but truly silver-like. Liquid metal, and they held no fear, no surprise, just quiet watchfulness. "You should not be here," the woman said, her voice low and smooth like riverstone. Lila tried to speak, but her throat was raw. She swallowed and tried again. "My ship went down." The woman nodded once, as if she already knew. "Who are you?" Lila asked Alara. The woman said simply, "And this place a tomb, a sanctuary, a prison. Depending on who you ask." Lila pushed herself up on trembling arms and noticed the creature curled at Alara's feet. It looked like a dragon, but small, no bigger than a large dog. Its scales were black as void and shimmered faintly like oil on water. Its eyes glowed amber and fixed on Lila with unnerving intelligence. "Is that yours?" Lila whispered. "Kyle," Alara said, and the creature lifted its head, gave a soft chuff, and settled again. Lila wanted to ask more, but exhaustion pulled at her bones. Her vision blurred, and the last thing she felt was a hand, cool and steady, pressing against her forehead. Then darkness. She woke to the smell of broth. Alara sat across the fire, stirring a small pot with a wooden spoon. Kale lay beside her head, resting on his paws, watching Lila with half-closed eyes. The storm still raged outside, but here in the stone chamber, it felt like another world, timeless and sealed. "You have 2 broken ribs," Alara said without looking up. "I set them while you slept." Lila touched her side, flinching at the dull ache. "How he was trained in healing, among other things." "Where are we really?" "Beneath the ruins of Silthar, once a city of my people. Now just bones and echoes. Your people. The Silthari. We were called elves by your kind, though. We never used that name." Lila stared. "I thought elves were myths." "So are many things until they stand before you." Silence settled between them, broken only by the crackle of fire and the distant moan of wind outside. Lila sipped the broth. It tasted earthy and warm, and eased the ache in her chest. She studied Alara, the sharp line of her jaw, the way her fingers moved. With quiet precision, the strange stillness that clung to her like a second skin. "Why are you here?" Alara asked finally. "My cargo run went sideways. Solar flares knocked out comms and nav. I was rerouting when the engines blew, and you chose to land here. Of all places, I didn't choose. The ship chose for me." Ilara's silver eyes flicked toward the ceiling as if listening to something beyond the stone. "They will come soon," she murmured. "Who those who hunt?" Malila stiffened. "Who's hunting you?" "Men with guns, and greed, and no memory of what this moon once held. They think I carry something I do not. They think I know where it is. I do what is." Alara did not answer right away. Instead, She rose and walked to a narrow archway at the back of the chamber. She returned with a small object in her palm. It looked like a shard of crystal, but it pulsed with a soft blue light that throbbed like a heartbeat. "This is a key," she said, "but not the kind that opens doors. It opens time." Leela blinked. Time. The Scifi did not build cities. We built vaults, places where moments could be stored like grain in a silo. This moon holds one such vault deep beneath the ice. It sleeps until the blood moon rises in 3 days. And these hunters want it. They want to turn it into a weapon to undo their enemies before they are even born, to rewrite history in their image. That's insane. Perhaps, but power always sounds insane to those who do not crave it. Lila looked at Kale. The dragon's eyes were open now, fully alert. His tail twitched once like a cat sensing danger as he just... Lara smiled faintly. "No, Kale is my bondmate. He has been with me since I was a child. He is part of my soul as I am part of his." Leela didn't know what to say to that, so she drank more broth and watched the fire hours pass. The storm eased slightly, but the cold remained sharp as glass. Outside, Ilara moved with quiet purpose, checking the chamber's seals, sharpening a slender blade made of something darker than steel. Kale followed, her every move, his claws clicking softly on stone. Lila tried to stand, but pain shot through her sides. "Stay still," Ilara said. "You are not healed. I can't just sit here. You can and you will. For now. Why are you helping me? Because you are here, because you saw nothing you should not have seen. And because sometimes fate drops a pilot in the snow for a reason." Leela wanted to argue. But the truth was, she had nowhere else to go. No ship, no signal, no hope of rescue. Not on Varel. 9. So she sat and watched and listened as night deepened. Ilara sat by the fire, her face half in shadow, and began to speak. Not to Lila, but to the flames. "My people believed. Time was not a line, but a river. It flows, but it also bends. It can be cupped in hands if the hands are steady enough." The vault beneath us holds a moment, the last moment before the great silence, when the Scifi chose to vanish rather than let their knowledge be used for war. That moment is pure. It is untouched by regret or rage. And that is why they want it. Who are they really? A man named Voss. He leads a mercenary fleet called the Iron Veil. They were once part of the Alliance, but broke away after the Treaty of Helios. They believe the old races hoarded power, and that humans deserve to claim it by force, and you're the last one who can stop them. I am the last who knows the way. Lila looked at her. "You're not going to let them win, are you?" Ilara's gaze met hers, steady and cold as starlight. "Nothing. I'm with you. You do not even know me. No, you saved my life, and you're fighting something bigger than yourself. That's enough." Lara studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Very well. But you must do exactly as I say when I say it. No questions. No hesitation." Lila swallowed and nodded back suddenly. Kale lifted his head, ears flared, his amber eyes fixed on the entrance. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Ilara was on her feet in an instant, blade in hand. "They are early," she whispered. Leela's heart hammered against her ribs. "Show. Many do not know, but they found the ship. Can they track me here? Not easily. But they have scanners and bloodhounds, and worse." "What's worse?" "Things that used to be." Human Ilara moved to the archway and pressed her palm against a hidden seam in the wall. Stone groaned, and a narrow passage opened behind the fire. "Go," she said. "What about you?" "I will hold them here." "No." Lila stepped forward. "You said I'm with you. That means no." Ilara hesitated, then nodded. "Stay behind me and do not touch the walls. The stone remembers paint." Hay entered the passage, Kale at their heels. The air grew colder, and the walls pulsed with a faint blue light like veins beneath skin. Lila kept her eyes forward, her breath fogging in the air. Every sound echoed too loudly. "How far, though?" "The heart chamber. It is safe there for now. What happens in 3 days? The blood moon rises, the vault awakens, and I must decide whether to seal it forever or let it be taken. And if they get to it first, then time itself becomes their weapon, and no one in the galaxy will be safe." Leela's stomach twisted, but she kept walking. They moved through twisting corridors carved with more of those shifting symbols. Sometimes the floor sloped sharply downward, and Lila had to brace herself against the walls. Ilara moved like she'd walked this path 1,000 times, her steps sure and silent, after what felt like hours. They reached a circular chamber lit by a single column of light that fell from a crack in the ceiling. Moonlight, Lila realized, and it was red-tinged the color of rust. The blood moon has already begun its rise, Alara said softly. But you said 3 days. It begins now. The full rise is in 3 days, but the veil is thinning already. Kale circled the chamber. Once then lay down. In the center, his scales drinking in the red light. Lila sank to her knees, her side burning but her mind racing. So what do we do until then? We wait, we watch, and we prepare. For war, Alara looked at her, and for the first time, Lila saw something like sorrow in those silver eyes. Yes, for war. Outside, the wind rose again, howling through the ruins like a warning. And deep beneath the ice, something ancient stirred in its sleep. Morning came, not with light, but with a deeper red. The blood moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the ice. Even through the stone walls of the chamber, Lila could feel its pull like a slow heartbeat in the air. She woke stiff and sore, but her ribs no longer screamed with every breath. Kale lay beside her, his side rising and falling in steady rhythm. Alara stood at the edge of the chamber, one hand pressed against the wall. Her eyes closed as if listening to the stone itself. You slept deeply, Alara said without turning. I needed to. The storm has passed, but their ships are near. I can feel the hum of their engines through the ice. What do we do? We move. The vault is not safe here, not anymore. Lila pushed herself up, wincing slightly, but the pain was dull, now manageable. Where is the vault? Really beneath the central spire of Old Silther. It lies 3,000 meters down in a chamber lined with time crystals. Only a Siltheri and her bondmate can open it, so it's guarded not by walls or weapons, but by silence. Only those who understand stillness can reach it. And Voss, he understands only noise and fire. They gathered what little they had. Alara slung a small pack over her shoulder and fastened a dark blade to her thigh. Kale shook himself, scales glinting like wet obsidian, then pressed close to Alara's side, his amber eyes scanning every shadow. They left the chamber through a narrow tunnel that sloped downward. The walls here were smoother, carved with flowing lines. That seemed to guide their steps. The air grew warmer the deeper they went, and a soft hum filled the space. Not loud, but constant, like the breath of something vast and sleeping after an hour. Lila broke the silence. Why did your people hide the vault? Because they saw what humans would do with it. They watched your wars, your hunger for more power, more land, more time. They knew you would not stop until you unraveled the fabric of existence itself. But not all humans are like that. Alara glanced at her. Perhaps not, but power does not care about intent. Only who holds it. Lila had no answer to that. They walked for hours, the tunnel twisting and turning until it opened into a vast cavern lit by glowing veins of blue crystal that ran through the walls and ceiling. The floor was smooth like glass, and in the center rose a spire of black stone, tall and slender like a needle pointing to the sky above. The spire, Alara whispered. Kale let out a low chuff and patted forward, his claws clicking softly on the glassy floor. This is the entrance. The real vault is below. How do we get down? Alara stepped to the base of the spire and placed both hands on its surface. She closed her eyes and began to hum a low, wordless song. The stone responded, rippling like water, and a spiral staircase appeared, winding down into darkness. Lila stared. It only appears for Siltheri blood, and Kale, he is part of that blood now. They descended the stairs. Seemed endless, each step colder than the last. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and something older, something like memory. The walls pulsed faintly with the same blue light as the crystals above. How long has it been since anyone came here? Centuries, Alara said, since my mother sealed it before she vanished. Your mother? She was the last keeper before me. What happened to her? She chose to fade into the vault, to become part of the moment it holds so it would never be corrupted. Lila's chest tightened. That's why you have to go back, isn't it? Alara did not answer, but her steps slowed. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a round chamber. No larger than a ship's hold. In the center floated a sphere of pure light, no bigger than a fist. It pulsed slowly like a sleeping heart, and around it the air shimmered, with colors that had no name. The heart of the vault, Alara said softly. Kale circled it once, then sat, his eyes locked on the light. Lila felt a strange pull in her chest. Not fear, not awe, but something deeper like recognition. What does it do? It holds the last pure moment before the Silthari left this world, a moment of choice, not of war or fear, but of peace. If someone unlocks it, they can step into that moment and change what comes after. So Voss wants to go back and stop your people from leaving, or worse, make them serve him. Can he even do that? If he has the key and the blood moon aligns. Yes, do you have the key? Alara held up the crystal shard. It glowed brighter here near the heart. But it's not enough. The vault requires more than a key. It requires a bond, a true bond between keeper and bondmate. Ka let out a soft sound and nuzzled her hand. They will be here soon, Alara said. We must prepare. Prepare Howby. Making sure they cannot reach this place. Lila looked around the chamber, bare and small. No weapons, no exits. What can we do? We can lead them away. You want to use yourself as bait? I am the only one they want. No, Lila stepped forward. You said, I'm with you. That hasn't changed. Alara turned to her silver eyes. Searching, why do you stay? You could take a ship if we find one. You could leave this moon behind because someone has to stand with you, and it might as well be. Milara studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Very well, but you must do exactly as I say. They climbed back up the spire and returned to the upper cavern. Alara moved quickly now, her calm replaced by urgency. She pressed her hands to certain points on the walls, and the glowing veins dimmed one by one. What are you doing? Sealing the path. The vault will go dark to all, but as will that stop them? Not forever, but it will slow them. As they worked, a low rumble shook the cavern. Dust fell from the ceiling. They are drilling through the ice. Alara said, how close? Too close. Suddenly, Kale's head snapped up, his ears flat against his skull. A deep growl rolled from his chest. Alara froze. They brought hounds, not real hounds. No worse, bioengineered trackers with Silthari blood in them, stolen from old labs. They can smell the vault's echo. Can they follow us? Yes, then we run. They left the cavern through a side passage, narrow and steep. It led upward toward the surface. The air grew colder with every step, and the red light of the blood moon filtered through cracks above. They emerged near the ruins of a collapsed tower, half buried in snow. The sky was clear now, and the moon hung like a wound in the heavens in the distance. Dark shapes moved across the ice ships and figures in armored suits. They've landed, Lila whispered, and they know we are near. What's the plan? We lead them east toward the fracture fields. The ice there is thin and unstable. If we're lucky, it will swallow them. And if we're not, then we fight. They moved quickly across the snow. Kale stayed low, his dark scales blending with the shadows. Alara's steps were silent as falling ash. Lila followed as best she could, her ribs still tender but her mind sharp with adrenaline. After an hour, they reached the edge of the fracture fields. A vast plain of ice crisscrossed with deep cracks, some wide enough to swallow a ship. The wind howled through the gaps like voices crying out. Stay close, Alara warned the ice shifts without warning. They picked their way carefully across the plain, but the hunters were close behind. Lila could see the beams of their searchlights, cutting through the red gloom, then a sound like thunder. The ice beneath them groaned and split with a crack that echoed for miles. Run, Alara shouted. They sprinted as the ground broke apart behind them. Chunks of ice the size of buildings tumbled into the abyss below. Lila slipped, but Alara caught her arm and pulled her forward. Kale leapt over a widening gap, his wings flaring for balance. They reached solid ground just as the entire field behind them collapsed into darkness. For a moment there was silence. Then a voice echoed across the plain, amplified and called Alara. Silthari, we know you are there, Voss. She stood on a ridge 50 meters away, flanked by armored soldiers and two hulking creatures with too many eyes and limbs that twitched like broken machines. You cannot hide forever. He called. The blood moon rises, the vault will open, and you will give it to us. Never. Alara shouted back. Voss laughed, a dry sound like rusted metal. You think you are the last of your kind, but we have others. We have blood, we have keys, and soon we will have time itself. Alara's hand tightened on her blade. You have nothing but stolen scraps. We have enough. He raised a hand and the soldiers raised their weapons. Run, Lila whispered. Not yet. Suddenly Kale leapt into the air, his wings spread wide and a roar tore from his throat. Not loud but deep enough to shake the ice beneath their feet. The hounds staggered back, whining. Now Alara grabbed Lila's arm and they ran. Bullets whizzed past them. Ice shattered underfoot. But they did not stop. They ran until their lungs burned and the ridge was far behind. When they finally stopped to rest in a shallow cave, Lila collapsed, gasping, "They'll keep coming." "Yes, what do we do now? We wait for the final rise of the blood moon. When? Is that tomorrow night? And then I must choose to open the vault or destroy it. Can you destroy it? I can shatter the heart, but it will cost me my life." And Kale's Lila looked at the dragon who lay beside Alara. His eyes half closed but alert. There has to be another way. Perhaps, but I do not see it yet. Lila sat in silence, the red moon casting long shadows across the cave walls outside. The wind began to rise again, carrying with it the distant sound of engines. They were not done hunting and the vault was not yet safe. But for now they had breath and time and each other, and that would have to be enough. The night deepened, and the red glow of the blood moon painted the ice in shades of rust and shadow. Lila sat near the mouth of the cave, watching the horizon for movement. Her body ached, but her mind was sharp. Every sound, every shift in the wind, made her tense. Alara sat a few feet away, sharpening her blade with slow, deliberate strokes. Kale lay between them, his amber eyes open and unblinking, scanning the darkness like a sentry. "They will not stop," Alara said after a long silence. "I know they think time is something to be owned like a ship or a weapon they do not understand. It is a current. You cannot hold it. You can only move with it or be swept away." Lila looked at her. "Do you really have to die to stop them? If it is the only way, then yes, there has to be another way." Alara paused, her hand still on the blade for a moment, then she looked up, silver eyes catching the moonlight. "You care too much for someone you just met? Maybe, but you're the only one standing between them and whatever nightmare they want to build." Alara said nothing for a long time, then she nodded once. "Rest while you can, tomorrow will be harder." Lila tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw Voss's face, cold and certain, like he already owned the future. She saw the hounds with their too many eyes and the way the ice had shattered like glass beneath their feet. She saw Alara stepping into the light of the vault and vanishing forever. She did not sleep. By dawn the wind had died, and the world was eerily still. The blood moon hung lower now, almost touching the horizon, its light thicker, heavier like syrup. The air hummed with a strange energy that made Lila's skin prickle. "We move now," Alara said, rising. "Where to? Back to the spire?" "The vault must be sealed before the moon reaches its peak." They left the cave and moved quickly across the ice, keeping low and using the ruins for cover. The silence was worse than the storm. It felt like the whole moon was holding its breath. They were halfway to the spire when they saw him. A figure in a torn flight suit stumbled out from behind a collapsed wall, one arm wrapped around his ribs, the other clutching a broken comms unit. He looked human young, with dark hair matted with frost and eyes wide with fear. "Please," he gasped. "Help." Lila stopped, but Alara held up a hand. "Do not trust him, but he's hurt." "So are we." The man dropped to his knees, coughing. "Blood, my ship went down 2 days ago. I've been hiding from them. They killed my crew. They're monsters." Lila looked at Alara, who watched the man with narrowed eyes. "What is your name?" she asked. "Mason, where were you stationed? Cargo hauler out of Helios?" Alara's gaze did not waver. "Lead to me again, and I will leave you here." The man flinched, then his expression changed. The fear melted away, replaced by something colder, sharper. "Fine, you caught me." Before Lila could react, he moved fast, pulling a small device from his coat and slamming it to the ground. Smoke erupted, thick and black. "Blinding, run!" Alara shouted, but it was too late. Figures emerged from the smoke-armored and silent, weapons raised. Voss stepped through the haze. "Smiling, well done, Mason," he said. The man nodded and stepped back. Lila's stomach dropped. "You led them to Ussuri, pilot," he said. "Not personal, just business." Alara moved like lightning, her blade flashing, but a stun net shot from one of the soldiers caught her mid-leap. She crashed to the ice, convulsing. Kale roared and lunged, but another device emitted a high-pitched shriek that made him collapse, his wings folding tight against his body. Lila tried to run, but a soldier grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. Pain shot through her side and she gasped. Voss walked over and crouched in front of her. "You've been a thorn, Lila Cruz, but thank you for leading us right to her. You used me." Of course we did, you were never the prize, just the path. He stood and nodded to his men. Take the elf and the dragon, bring them to the drill site. The vault opens in 6 hours and I want everything ready. They dragged Alara away. She was limp now, unconscious but alive. Kale was carried between 2 soldiers, his body small but heavy. His eyes half open, filled with pain. Lila struggled, but the grip on her arm was iron. What about? Her boss asked, nodding at Lila. Leave her. She's useless now. They shoved her to the ground and walked away, leaving her in the snow. For a long time, Lila lay there numb. Not from the cold, but from betrayal and failure. The wind picked up again, howling through the ruins like a funeral song. She had failed. Alara was gone. Kale was gone, and the vault would open in hours. She pushed herself up slowly, every muscle screaming. But her mind was clear now, sharp as glass. They thought she was useless. They were. Wrong. She remembered the iron sparrow. It was damaged, but not destroyed if she could get back to it. She could fly. She could fight. She ran. The journey back to the crash site took less than an hour. She moved like a ghost, slipping through shadows, avoiding patrols. The ship sat half buried in snow. Its hull cracked, but the cockpit intact. She climbed inside and flicked switches, praying the core still held. Lights flickered, then steadied. Engines groaned, but responded. She had power. Not much, but enough. She pulled up the nav screen and scanned for the drill site. A thermal bloom showed deep in the central basin. That had to be it, but she could not just fly in, guns blazing. They would shoot her down before she got close. She needed a plant. Then she saw it, the old Alliance distress beacon still mounted on the hull. It was outdated but functional. If she activated it on a loop, it would mimic a rescue signal. Drawing attention away from the vault, it was a decoy run suicide maybe. But Alara had risked everything. For her now it was her turn. She armed the beacon, set the autopilot, and climbed into the pilot seat as the engines roared to life. She whispered a promise, hold on, Alara, I'm coming. The iron sparrow lifted off, shuddering but steady. It climbed into the red sky, leaving a trail of smoke and hope behind. She flew low, hugging the ice to avoid radar. The beacon pulsed every 10 seconds, a bright false hope in the void. Within minutes she saw them, ships rising from the basin, weapons hot. They took the bait good. She pushed the throttle forward and aimed straight for the largest ship, but just as she prepared to fire, a sound cut through the comms. Not a voice, but a feeling, a faint psychic cry. Thin and desperate, she is fading. Kale, he was reaching out to her through the bond he shared with Alara, and somehow she could hear it. That changed everything. She banked hard and veered away from the fleet, not toward them, but around them, toward the drill site itself. They would expect a frontal assault. They would not expect her to land. She brought the Sparrow down in a narrow canyon half a mile from the site. The ship groaned as it skidded to a stop. She grabbed a plasma cutter from the cargo hold and a sidearm. She knew she would not last long, but she did not need long, just long enough. She moved on foot, now silent and fast. The drill site loomed ahead, a massive machine boring into the ice, surrounded by tense lights and armed guards. She spotted Alara right away, chained to a metal frame inside a glowing containment field, her head bowed, her silver hair dull. Kale lay nearby, unmoving, his scales dark. His breath shallow. Lila's heart pounded, not from fear but from rage. She found a maintenance tunnel marked with old Alliance symbols and slipped inside the air. It was warm here, humming with power. She followed the cables deeper into the complex until she reached a control room. Empty for now. She disabled the alarms, cut the feed to the cameras, and rerouted power to the eastern sector, creating a distraction. Then, she moved. She took out 2 guards with silent precision, using the plasma cutter to short their suits. They dropped without a sound. She reached the edge of the main chamber and saw Voss standing before the containment field, speaking to Alara, who did not look up. You will open it, he said, or I will burn the moment from your mind piece by piece. Alara lifted her head slowly. You cannot burn what you do not understand. Voss smiled and pressed a button on his wrist. The field flared brighter. Alara cried out and collapsed to her knees. Lila could wait no longer. She stepped into the light. Hey, Voss, she called. He turned, surprise flickering across his face, then amusement. The useless pilot, you came back? I told you I'm with her. And what will you do? Alone. She fired the sidearm, not at him but at the power conduit above the field. Sparks exploded and the containment flickered. Alara looked up, eyes locking with Lila's. "No, Kale," she whispered. The dragon's eyes snapped open, and with a roar he surged upward, breaking his restraints. Fire erupted from his jaws, engulfing 2 guards in an instant. Chaos erupted. Lila ran toward Alara, dodging gunfire, her side burning. But she did not stop. She reached the frame and used the plasma cutter on the chainsaw. Alara grabbed her hand. "You came back always." The ground shook. The drill had hit something deep. The vault was waking. Boss shouted orders, but the ice beneath them cracked and split. "Run," Alara said, pulling Lila toward the exit, Kale at their heels. They burst out into the red light as the drill site collapsed behind them. But they were not safe. Not yet. The blood moon was almost at its peak, and the vault was opening. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they ran, the ice splitting open in jagged lines behind them, like claws raking the surface of the world. Smoke and fire rose from the ruined drill site, and the air smelled of burnt metal and ozone. Lila's lungs burned, but she did not slow. Ilara's hand was tight around hers, and Kale ran just ahead, his wings half spread, ready to shield them if needed. They reached the edge of the central basin, where the spire rose like a black tooth against the red sky. The blood moon hung just above the horizon, now swollen and heavy, its light thick as blood. The vault was awake. Lila could feel it in her bones, a deep hum that vibrated through the ice and into her chest. "We have to get inside," Ilara said, "but Fashi will follow, but the vault will not let him pass, not unless he has Silthari blood and a true bond, does he know? But he has stolen pieces, and that may be enough to get him close." They entered the spire. The staircase spiraled downward faster now. As if pulled by the vault itself, the walls glowed brighter the deeper they went, blue light pulsing in time with the humid. The bottom, the heart of the vault, floated as before, but now it spun slowly, casting shifting patterns across the chamber. The air shimmered with heatless energy, and the scent of old rain filled the space. Ilara stepped forward, her hand outstretched. "It knows the moon is near." "What happens now?" Lila asked. "Now it waits for me to choose, to seal it or destroy it, or use it." Ilara looked at her, silver eyes wide with something like fear. Using it would unravel everything, every choice, every life, every moment. After this one would be rewritten by whoever holds the heart. "I cannot risk that." "Then seal it." "I can. But it will take time, and Power and Voss will be here soon." As if on cue, a sound echoed from above, boots on stone, voices shouting. "They found you." Solara turned to Kale and placed a hand on his head. The dragon closed his eyes and let out a low purr. "Need you to stay with her," she said to him. Kale looked at Lila, then back at Ilara, and gave a slow blink. "What are you doing?" Lila asked. "Buying time." No. Ilara cupped Lila's face for just a moment, her touch cool and steady. "Trust me." Then she turned and walked to the center of the chamber beneath the spinning heart. She raised her arms and began to chant words that had no sound but vibrated in the air like plucked strings. The chamber walls flared with light. The staircase above groaned and sealed itself, stone sliding into place with a final thud. But it was too late. Voss stood at the edge of the room, having slipped through before the seal closed behind him. Mason at his side and 4 armored soldiers, weapons raised. "You always were dramatic, Ilara," he said. "This place is not for you. Everything is for me, no." He nodded, and Mason stepped forward, holding a small vial filled with silver liquid. "Silthari blood," he said, "stolen from a lab on Helios 9. It should be enough to fool the vault." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you are playing with." "I know enough." He threw the vial at the heart. The moment it touched the light, the chamber shook violently. The heart flared white, then black, then red. Cracks appeared in the air like broken glass, and time itself seemed to stutter. Lila felt dizzy, like the world was tilting. Ilara screamed no, but it was too late. The artifact, destabilized energy, arced across the room, throwing soldiers back like rag dolls. The walls cracked and pieces of stone fell from the ceiling. Voss laughed even as blood trickled from his nose. "It is Mina." Lara fell to her knees, her silver hair dulling her skin. Paling, Lila ran to her. "What's happening?" "The vault is breaking. If it shatters, the moment will be lost, and the energy will erase everything. Within 1,000 kilometers. Can you stop it?" "Only by binding myself to it." No. Lara looked up, tears in her silver eyes. "I have Toe. She pushed herself up and staggered toward the heart. Kale roared and leapt between her and Voss, fire bursting from his jaws. Voss raised an arm and a pulse shield flared to life, deflecting the flames. But the dragon did not stop. He charged, slamming into Voss and sending him crashing into the wall. Mason fired his weapon, but Kale twisted mid-air and knocked the gun from his hand with a swipe of his tail. Leela grabbed Ilara's arm. There has to be another way. There is no. Lara pulled free and placed both hands on the heart. Light exploded. Not bright but deep, filling the chamber with a silence so complete it hurt. Voss screamed as his body began to flicker like a bad signal. His form shifting between moments. Young old Ghana Mason vanished without a sound. The soldiers crumbled into dust. The vault was consuming them, rewriting them out of existence. But Ilara was fading. To her skin turned translucent, her hair silver mist. Her eyes dimming. Lila reached for her, but her hand passed through like smoke. Ilara whispered a single word in the old tongue. Then she collapsed. Kale let out a mournful cry and curled around her body. His wings wrapping her in shadow. Lila fell to her knees beside them, tears freezing on her cheeks. No, Thee. The heart slowed its spinning. The cracks in the air began to heal. The chamber grew quiet again, the hum fading to a whisper. Lara lay. Still. Kale pressed his head to her chest and let out a soft whine, then a breath faint but there. Lara's chest rose. Lila gasped. She's alive. But changed. Ilara's eyes opened, not silver now, but filled with tiny points of light like stars in a night sky. Her skin glowed faintly, and her voice when she spoke was layered with echoes. The vault is sealed, she said. The moment is safe. What did you do? I became its guardian, not its prisoner. It flows through me now. At what cost? I will never leave this place. Again, not truly. Lila's heart ached. You gave up everything. I kept what matters. She reached out, and this time her hand was solid warm. Above them the sealed stone groaned, and a new sound echoed. Not boots, not voices, but the thrum of a rescue shuttle. They found us, Lila whispered. Ilara looked up toward the ceiling. They will take you home. What about you? My home is here now with the vault with Kayland. Milara smiled a small sad smile. If you choose to stay. Lila looked at the dragon, who blinked slowly, his amber eyes full of understanding. She looked back at Ilara, at the stars in her eyes, at the quiet strength in her voice. I'm not leaving. Ilara's smile widened just a little. Then we have time outside. The blood moon began to set, its red light fading. To gray, the storm was over. The hunters were gone, and the vault slept once more, guarded by a woman who was no longer just elf or human, but something in between, something ancient and new. And in the quiet chamber beneath the ice, two hearts beat in time with the stars. The rescue shuttle hovered above the ruins of Varel 9, its engines humming softly in the thin air. The storm had passed, and the blood moon was gone, replaced by the pale silver of a normal lunar cycle. The ice stretched in every direction, quiet and still, as if nothing had happened. But Lila knew better. She could still feel the echo of the vault deep beneath her feet, a quiet pulse like a second heartbeat. Ilara stood beside her at the edge of the spire, her star-filled eyes watching the sky. The rescue team had arrived an hour ago, sent by a distress signal. Lila never sent. Someone must have picked up the Iron Sparrow's last transmission. They called down, asking if she was hurt, if she needed medical help, if she was ready to leave. She had not answered yet. Kyle lay at their feet, his scales dark but shimmering faintly with the same soft light that now clung to Ilara's skin. He lifted his head as the shuttle's ramp lowered, and two medics stepped out in white suits, their faces hidden behind visors. Leela Cruz. One called her name, voice crackling through a speaker. She turned to Ilara. You could come with me. Ilara shook her head gently. I cannot. The vault needs me, and I need it. We are bound now, but you're still you, more than before. Leela looked down at her hands, then back at the shuttle. It represented safety, warmth, a return to the life she knew. But that life felt small, now distant, like a dream she had outgrown. The medics waited patiently. Ilara reached out and took Lila's hand, her touch warm and steady. You do not have to stay, I know, but you want to. Leela met her gaze, the stars in Ilara's eyes swirling like distant galaxies. Yes, Ilara smiled, a small, quiet smile that held centuries of sorrow and hope. Then stay. Leela turned to the medics and raised a hand. I'm not leaving. The medics exchanged glances, then one nodded. Understood. We will report you safe, but off-grid. They retreated up the ramp and the shuttle lifted off, vanishing into the clouds, leaving the two women and the dragon alone on the ice. For a long time no one spoke. The wind whispered through the ruins and the sun rose slowly on the horizon, casting golden light across the snow. What now? Ilara asked. Now we rebuild. Lila said, why not? The vault needs a guardian. But it also needs a home. Not just a tomb. Ilara looked at her, understanding dawning in her starlit eyes. You would build something here. If you'll let me. Kale stood and stretched, then patted over to nudge Lila's hand with his snout, his amber eyes bright with approval. They worked for days, clearing snow from the old ruins, reinforcing walls with salvaged metal from the Iron Sparrow and the wreckage of Voss's camp. They built a small shelter near the spire, warm and dry with a fire, pit and a bed of furs. They gathered ice crystals that glowed faintly and set them in the walls for light. At night they sat by the fire, Ilara telling stories of the Silthari, not as myths, but as people who laughed and loved and made mistakes. Lila spoke of her life among the stars, of freight runs and lonely ports and the quiet courage of ordinary people. They were different but not apart. One evening, as the stars filled the sky, Ilara turned to Lila. Want to ask you something before I go? Lila's heart raced, not from fear but from the weight of those words, the same words that had started it all. Go where you're staying, not my body, my old self. The part of me that was only Silthari. That part is gone now. I am something else, and I need to know if you see me not as what I was, but as what I am. Lila reached out and took her hand. I see you, Ilara. Always. Ilara's eyes shimmered, and for a moment the stars within them burned brighter. Thank you. They sat in silence as Kyle curled around them. His warmth a shield against the cold weeks turned to months. The ice melted in patches, revealing old stone paths and gardens long buried. Lila planted hardy mosses and lichens that glowed blue in the dark. Ilara taught her the old songs that made the crystals hum and the vault respond. They were not alone. Sometimes ships passed overhead, scanning but never landing. Word had spread that Varel 9 was cursed, haunted by ghosts and storms and time itself. Let them believe it, Lila said. It keeps us safe. Ilara agreed. One day Lila found a small crystal growing near the spire. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the vault, but softer, gentler. What is it? She asked. A new moment. Ilara said, the first one we made together. Lila held it in her palm, feeling its warmth. Can others come here someday? Only if they mean no harm. The vault knows intent. Now it learns from us. So we're teaching it in a way. Yes, Lila smiled. Good. As the seasons turned, the ruins became a home. Not grand, not hidden, but alive with quiet purpose. Ilara walked the ice with starlight in her veins, and Lila flew short runs in a repaired shuttle, bringing supplies and seeds and books from distant ports. Scale grew larger, his wings spanning the width of the main chamber, his roar now a song that echoed through the canyons. They were guardians, not just of a vault, but of a choice, the choice to protect rather than possess, to build rather than break. And in the evenings, when the fire burned low and the stars watched from above, Ilara would look at Lila and say nothing at all, because nothing needed to be said. They had found something rare. Not just peace, but partnership. Not just survival, but meaning. The galaxy spun on wars, raged empires, rose and fell. But on Varel 9, time moved differently. Not faster or slower, but deeper, like a river that knew its course. And in that river, two women and a dragon stood together, not as savior and saved, but as equals, bound by trust, by sacrifice, and by the quiet, unshakable truth that some questions do not need answers, only presence. The vault slept, the stars shone, and they remained.